Alright, going live, starting music, it's playing. Alright, let's see.
Test 1 2 1 2. Chugging. Why is it chugging?
Alright, sending out the bat signal. Bat signal's out.
This guy needs to put down Autodesk, whatever that is. Alright, whatever. Hopefully that's fine. Bat signal. We're live. We're live now. Who was the first person? Oh boy.
Who is the first person?
I don't know.
Rick Bogus.
Yes, we know it's Friday.
That's the schedule. Okay, just clearing the YouTube cache and we should be good. Sorry, I'm talking over the music because it's loud, but you guys can't even hear it. So you're like, why is he yelling? Come on, YouTube cache. Alright. Coming to our faces here. There we go.
Hello.
Hello?
That's frozen. Fix that. There he is. Chat, refresh. Get that going. Alright. I think we're good to go. I turned the
bonus.
music off.
It's not
See
a
if we're
bonus.
getting
This is just the Friday podcast.
This is
it's
just
for next
next
week.
week's show. We're just doing it today instead
Yes,
of Monday.
we're doing it early because we're going to be in Camp Mograph
And
Tuesday.
Monday is my
we're
birthday.
leaving on Tuesday.
And I'm not
Oh
going to
yeah,
work on my
Monday's his
birthday.
birthday.
All right, people coming
So-
in. We got some chats. We got some stuff and things. We're ready to go. We got some notes. I think we're good. Some audio problems earlier, but I think we are band-aided. And it's going to be a good show. I'm ready for this.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to ask you a question, Brandon, and then we're going to let you talk for 2 hours.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Hope you're ready for that.
Oh boy. That's right. I always have a rant about something, so.
I like your rants. They're nice.
Yes, they are.
All right. I got my notes here ready to go. I'm going to start rolling. Is everybody else rolling?
I am rolling. Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. We're going to do a quick sync here for the audio recording. It'll be 1, 2, 3, clap. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. Ready to go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're not forgetting anything, are we? I think we're good. Okay. All right. What's up and welcome to another Mograph Mocast. I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt, and joining us today is one of my absolutely favorite people in this entire industry, Mr. Brandon Parvini.
Hello.
And Mograph is a supplement to our site, mograph.com, which is a motion graphics tutorial site with tutorials, plugins, podcasts, and other Mograph stuff. And on the show, we talk about everything ranging from motion graphics to Cinema 4D, After Effects, plugins, render engines, doing business, doing taxes, being a contractor, or working for the man. You can email us, info@mograph.com. Let us know what you think about the show. Send us your questions, concerns, comments, queries, grievances. We love getting those from you. They could be something noob. They could be something super difficult to answer. We'll try and answer them. I don't know. And, yeah. that's the deal.
Did my audio stop? My audio stopped.
Your audio stopped recording?
Yes.
Oh, great. And no, I don't sound different
Oh.
on the stream. I only sound different to you.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
alright.
Never mind then.
Oh, is your thing stopped recording, man? That sucks.
Yeah, it really stopped.
Keep an
I
eye
think
on
my
it.
audition just froze.
Well, we haven't talked to you yet, so I can keep my intro and you just resync.
All right,
Are
yeah,
you rolling?
keep it. Jeez. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to force quit
I
it.
hate Audition. So unreliable.
I rarely ever have a problem with it. I told you it was like being super janky. End task. It's probably this new Windows update.
I'm telling you.
All right, that's all right. It'll say, "Do you want to restore your thing previously?" And I'll say yes. Continue. So you'll at least have my intro.
Off to a great start.
All right. Well, it didn't save. Oh, there we go. Untitled 2.
All right.
Hold on. Title 2. Let's see, what do I got? Sorry, y'all. Recording test 1, 2. Yes. References. New hardware. Oh. Something happened with my Yeti, I think. Like, you know, normally whenever I touch the cat while I'm recording. Oh,
There was a joke in
well,
there, but
it
I'm just
actually
gonna
continued
completely.
recording. It continued recording during all that. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's still looking weird, but whatever. It's going. I'll keep an eye on
I'm
it.
sure it's
Can we do
actually
another sync
recording,
real
right?
quick? It is
got a
actually recording,
waveform?
yes. And it did actually record all that I was talking. It was just frozen.
Weird. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's resync. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Cool.
All right. Okay, and Brandon, I'm probably going to accidentally call you Patrick at some point in the show. I'm just letting you know because I have a friend named Patrick, and I cannot stop saying Patrick Parvini because that's his name. So I try so hard, and I still do it. I don't know why, but
it's totally okay.
There you go.
You know what? Most people call me Brian, anyways. So
Brian.
That's funny.
So, couple week wrap up things, and we got a lot to talk about. I think this is going to be a great show. Hopefully, there's a good few rants in there of yours, Brandon. I got a nice taste of it at SIGGRAPH 2018 on the you remember the very last night we were there, and we were like chilling at the hotel bar, and then something like set you off, and you went on this rant for like 30 minutes, and everybody was just like, just watching, just loving, taking it all in. It was amazing.
Yeah, I know. Rick still gives me looks on that one. Thank God he's a patient person. But yeah, I do remember that one. You know, but ultimately stuff like that. That's why SIGGRAPH's great.
Yeah.
Is
yeah.
Just being able to have a room full of people that you can get into the weeds with something and not have people kind of glaze over with the blank look on their face that I usually get when I get too energetic about something.
Well,
Totally.
I'm looking forward to that today. A couple of things from the week wrap up. First of all, I just have to say there's a possibility Beeple might randomly call in during the show.
Yeah.
Just randomly. So just
he
be prepared.
Slept through the 200th episode.
Yeah.
That's the problem. He slept through it, and he
Yeah.
hit us up like an hour after it's over. He's like, "All right, what do I need to do?" And we're like, "Dude, you missed it." He's like, "Ah."
And he's like, "Well, I just might call in on a random episode, so you never know." Got his lower third ready just in case, you know. But we are wrapping up our work because we are, of course, as it is, it's super slow until you have to go out of town and everybody calls, which is great. Working on a lot of projects. I think this is the first time I actually used an oil tank as an actual oil tank in Cinema 4D this week. But we're wrapping up our work, and Mograph is coming up next week. We're super excited. Matt, you get your sponsor list ready. Oh yeah, you got the sweatshirt, the shirts, all the
Camp
things are in.
Mograph hoodies right now.
Swag.
Like I had to pump my air conditioning down to like 72 so that I could actually wear
Just
it.
pretend it's fall.
Right.
I had my first official pumpkin spice latte yesterday.
Gross.
Wore my yoga pants with juicy written on the butt. and it's almost fall. It doesn't feel like it here, but it sure will next week. And we are. I'm ready to do this. This has been a year.
I am too. We've been working
this.
on this thing for like 9 months.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I seriously can't wait.
The birth of the
I am
baby.
no longer having Camp Mograph nightmares where things aren't ready, and when someone says, "Hey, are you ready to go?" I'm like, "Yeah, we've only really got one more thing to do."
Yeah.
So
just get there.
We're just get there. Well, we still got to do the class schedule, but that's about it.
It's easy. We can do that.
Yeah.
We can do it. Sponsors. You got your sponsor list?
I do.
One last big thanks.
I do. This event could not have been done without any of these amazing sponsors. This is a very expensive event, and it definitely could not have happened at all had we not had a bunch of amazing sponsors on board.
And we couldn't have kept the prices the ticket prices the way they were without them.
Kept the prices and given you so much swag. There's so much swag.
Yeah.
If we hadn't given swag, we might have made a profit, but that's okay. But yeah, first off, of course, Maxon, they've been really great to us over the years, helping us out with everything. Maxon, of course, the makers of Cinema 4D. Sorry, my dog is having nightmares right now. It's okay. Camp Mograph is almost here. Maxon, the makers of Cinema 4D, we really appreciate what they've done. And of course, Otoy and Octane Render, the makers of Octane, GPU renderer, our renderer of choice. So thank you guys so much. Also Pixel Plow, our favorite plow, our favorite render farm, Mr. Plow, that's his name. That name again is Mr. Plow.
Okay.
Yes. Pixel Plow, and of course School of Motion. We appreciate them. Insidium, the makers of X Particles and Cycles 4D. AE Scripts for all your script and After Effects plugin needs, and of course Red Giant. So super big shout out to all of them. Give them some love. Tag them in your Camp Mograph, selfies. It's gonna be great.
And I'm like super excited that we were actually on the list of possible events people want to go to on the School of Motion survey.
Yeah, totally.
Super pumped about that.
I have no idea if I'm still recording. It's frozen right now. Yeah. Stupid audition. The thing is, it continued recording.
All right, we're just gonna hope that it's good, and if it's not, I'm gonna have to use the stream recording. Yeah.
Sorry, dude.
Thanks, Adobe.
Yeah.
All right. Luckily, I'm recording in Logic Pro and having no issues. All right. We got to get you a copy of that. Let's see. Other things on the list for this week. Just real quick, Industry Giants. We went and sat on the portfolio review panel. Despite not feeling qualified to judge art in that form, I felt it was fun.
I didn't feel like it at first, and then I started seeing everyone, and I was like, okay, I'm qualified enough.
Oh, that's mean.
No, I mean, I don't mean to sound like a jerk or anything, but a lot of these people were super noob. There were maybe 2 or 3 people that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, there was this one girl who was so good. And like her artwork, it was like super dark and disgusting looking, like grotesque in a way, and but so detailed and amazing, and she was showing me her portfolio, and it wasn't really it wasn't a demo reel or anything. It was just this artwork. And I said, "You're so freaking good. And I have no advice to tell you what to do with your life. But all I can say is what you're doing is really good."
It's just that it was in a weird wheelhouse. It's a little bit out of our industry. It's like halfway out of our industry. It's like a foot out the door. It's like video game and art and storyboard art and stuff. And I tried to give the best advice that I could,
Yeah. The problem was you had a lot of people who were like, "Oh, I'm a character designer,"
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, so a good majority of the people coming in were character designers,
Yeah.
but they had the exact same style.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's nothing that sets you apart from the 20 other people that I've seen in here,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And how many people do you think our industry is looking for character designers? Not that many.
Not
you know?
not in motion graphics per se.
No, not in
But a
motion
lot of the
graphics.
character design is for video games. That's why I felt
Yeah.
out of place. I'm like, I guess this looks good. You know, I saw
Yeah.
some people that took it a step further. They actually had not just the art, but the characters designed in 3D, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
showed what they looked like in a video game. There are some people who were really good, but, you know, there's a lot of students. That's the thing. So it was about
Yeah.
just, you know,
A lot of students. There were a couple of people like fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
You know, and the ones that I saw that were fresh out of high school, I said, you know, your reel is, or your stuff isn't necessarily to where it would be, but the fact that you're even doing it right now, right when you're fresh out of high school, is awesome.
yeah,
you know?
since I didn't really have that much advice on a lot of the art, my thing was to go to, you know, the career side of it and say, what are your goals? And, you know, make sure that they had a portfolio design for people who they were trying to get work, you know, working for.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, obviously, you know, that makes sense, but a lot of students really don't think about that. And they're like, well, I have these sketches, but I would like to be in video game development. It's like, well, you need to, if you're going to go to, you know, one of these game companies, you need to have something that looks like what they do, you know,
Totally.
not just a couple sketches, you know. But it was fun. I had a lot of fun. And one last thing on the list, I wanted to talk about the 3D design and motion plus motion tour. Chicago, the video from Chicago will be posting next week. From that, they're going to slowly be rolling out. All of these will be rolling out the videos from that. We are going to do a show when we get back from Camp Mograph on a Wednesday. All our schedules
Right.
are all off kilter. So
Yes, they
this
are.
is Monday's show. Then Wednesday we will have that following Wednesday we'll have that week's show, and then who knows after that for New York. I don't know what we're doing. So just
Yeah.
bear with us. You can always check out the schedule at mograph.com/schedule. But I wanted to mention 3D Design plus Motion Tour dates because we won't be able to mention these next time because they'll be over by then. So
Right.
today, Antwerp. October 1st is London. Make sure you get to that. I know Herrerasaurus is going to be at that one, and then she's immediately
Yeah.
going to fly out to Camp Mograph the next day. And let's see, Paris is October 4th, Berlin October 9th. They're starting the whole European leg of this, as you can see.
Mhm.
Stockholm October 11th, which is coincidentally the same day as the Beeple party, which I will be heading off
Sorry
to
for
as
those
well.
people out in Stockholm who can't come to the Beeple party.
Right. And then New York City is October 15th. Hopefully, we will be able to catch some of that, or at least see some people later that night.
Hopefully.
We'll be working
Yeah.
in New York,
We-
but
While we're in New York, I think we're gonna do a little meetup. You know,
Hopefully.
like we normally do. So
maybe
make sure
record
and
a
look
show.
out for that.
I don't know.
What?
Maybe record a show.
Maybe.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Let's get to the fun stuff. Brandon. Oh, Chad's here too, by the way.
Hey, Chad.
Hello.
Chad, Raid Zero, Mark. Oh, even your wife, Matt. All right,
Yes.
let's
Hi, my love.
let's get to the meat of everything. Let's start out with a little bit about your background for people who don't know who you are.
Oh, okay. So let's see here. I started probably around 2006. I started a company around that time called Ghost Town Media. Ran that for the better part of about a decade. During that time, I had a whole bunch of disastrous and fun projects that essentially fire trained me into the disaster you see in front of you today. Then, just as I was getting ready to have my first kid, I was like, you know what? I never really wanted to have a company. I only did it because I had a production company that I was working with that said, well, if you don't have a company, we can't sue you if a hard drive goes down. So I'm like, okay, we'll start a company. And then cut to a decade later, I'm like, I don't want a company. I don't want this overhead. So bounced out, went off to go do my own thing. Bumped into another Brandon Herzl, who runs a little shop called BMO. And he had this weird little show that was getting ready to kick off for Adult Swim. And he's like, hey, we could use some help. And I was at a point where I was like, oh, cool. Well, I've been doing Glitch and all kinds of dark, rock stuff for Linkin Park and Kanye and all these kind of other like super serious kind of things. And then the idea of like dropping everything and going over to a totally different style, losing all of my bag of tricks and having to almost start over again felt really befitting for the moment for me. So I was like, this sounds great. And I made an immediate fast friend with Brandon, an incredible collaborator. And since then I've been kind of working with him a tremendous amount, still working on Dream Corp for Adult Swim and a whole variety of other stuff. So yeah, background is in fine art. I was a painter and sculptor in school with an emphasis in design theory, and only got into this industry because I had roommates who were in the film program, and they said, "Hey, do you know Photoshop? Do you think you could kind of help us with a couple shots here?" And then I completely lost my way. I thought I was going to be in logo and branding and identity coming out of school. I didn't realize I'd be, completely so wayward with all you guys.
What was it that made you like that just like you fell in love with? What part of it?
It was the problem solving aspects.
Okay.
I don't know. There is this interesting blend. Okay, so with VFX there is like a problem solving, right? Where and I should also say, when I started, there wasn't really a Mograph, right? Motion design, wasn't really a thing at that point. Man, I'm old, and so it was basically VFX, right? And there's guys that were starting to want to make weird looking VFX, and it was kind of like the pre-Mograph kind of world, and no one had a real good idea of how to do anything. It was, oh well, like how would we even try to do it? And I was like, I can probably figure something out. I don't know, but it was always exciting to have to try to solve a problem that no one in the room knew how to even approach how to solve. That was the most interesting part. And then from there, it just kind of continued to steamroll as you kind of keep finding more and more complex problems to solve, trying to execute at a higher and higher and higher level. The problems and the questions get more difficult. And it was just completely engrossing. And it was all brand new. It didn't feel like a world that had been treaded over at that point. You felt like you're kind of trailblazing a little bit because someone would do a look for what felt like the first time. You're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. So yeah, it was a fascinating thing. It was totally Wild West, which was awesome. I still to this day feel fortunate that I managed to turn what honestly felt like a hobby at the start into a career that I can, feed my family, drive around and go take a trip on the money that you make off of that. Like I've always feel like I've kind of pulled one over on people.
And so,
That's fine.
Okay, so gosh, I don't even know where to go because there's so many questions that I have right now.
Yeah.
Open book.
Yeah.
Any question you want to ask me.
What was your first big project that you worked on? Because you've got a lot of really like, there's some people. I was checking out your website, and there's some people who just have like one or two like, major brands or something like that, and like yours is just it's filled and it's all beautiful work.
You're too kind. Checks in the mail. So it's interesting because I almost want to say like my first project I ever did was my biggest project because everything was essentially a domino series. I want to say I probably really feel like I hit my stride the strongest. We did a video for MGMT and Electric Feel, and during that video we were really experimenting with process and kind of getting very postmodern with like the approach towards how to make the video itself. And inside of there, we uncovered this technique called data moshing. That at that point we didn't, again, very old, it wasn't called data moshing when we were data moshing it initially.
Right.
And didn't end up making the video. And then we had a director that we like to work with, this guy Nabil, and he had a project for Kanye coming up, and he's like, "Do you have anything?" You know, a lot of our directors would come through and be like, "Hey, what's a cool new thing that I can pitch for a video?"
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, "Well, we got this thing that just is like sitting idle. I mean, do you want to use this?" And he pitched it. Kanye liked it, and then that became Welcome to Heartbreak. And that really, for me, was a major kind of pivotal moment, I think, in the career, because it was a video that really we started experimenting with the process in a very purposeful way. It wasn't just that we were idiots trying to do something that we weren't trained to do. It was, okay, we're developing a process that no one has really done in production before. How do you do best practices on experimentation? And that really started becoming this idea of like, okay, this is how we're going to make stuff. This is how we're going to try to solve problems, is through things that are more challenging, both technically and visually. Because that project got me the Linkin Park account, and I call it the account. Basically, you get a phone call. We were doing a video for this, just an awful hip hop video, and we get a phone call from a producer who wanted to meet with us. He was being really shady and like wasn't like telling us who the person was, and we almost told him to pound sand. We were so tired, we were so exhausted. We didn't want to. Everyone was sleeping underneath the table, and we're like, hey, let's just do it just in case. It ended up being Joe Han from Linkin Park, and that turned into like a very long, fruitful career inside of itself, where that relationship was incredibly meaningful for, I'd say, my development as an artist, because it was almost like a grant that had been given to me, where I had a team of people who liked the experimentation, wanted us to try to do something different, and Joe was so incredibly supportive, and the band was so incredibly supportive of just, hey, I want to learn photogrammetry. Can we do that for a new thing? They're like, sure, that sounds awesome. And we would just, okay, cool. Now we got a budget. Now we can go do photogrammetry for the first time. Cool. Like, you could experiment with so many things and know that it would get out there, know that you had the backing. It was awesome, you know. So yeah, so there's a couple like very key kind of projects that I think helped kind of develop a mindset and helped support this idea that like I wouldn't have to take the route of going to one of the big shops, because I never wanted to do that from up front.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to be a junior artist somewhere and slave my way up, because back then everyone was really mean. When we were first starting out, like, no one was nice. Everyone was really talented and no one was nice.
I like to feel like Maxon had a big part of bringing out the niceness in everyone.
Yeah, well, there was an aspect of community that showed up, and especially as a lot of the kind of elders started moving along a little bit, and you had more people coming in, and especially with the motion design industry, because VFX is still, I think, kind of that way.
Yeah.
Okay. But motion design is different, because it's not like there's some technique that if I teach you, you're going to now take my job in motion graphics.
Right.
Like, I can show you how to do something, but you still won't do what I did.
Right.
And that's a huge part and parcel of it, because the community can be here, and it's like, I don't care if I show you how I did a sim. That's not the point of what I was doing.
Right.
And so I think that allowed for a better community to kind of show up as motion design really kind of stratified itself away from the visual effects world, and we started kind of wiping off a lot of the inherited baggage that VFX had kind of brought with us.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the data moshing. Of course, I didn't know, or I guess it wasn't called that, like you said, but
right.
And I didn't know who you were at the time, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know EJ, I didn't know Matthias, I didn't know anybody. I was working at this ad agency, and somebody was playing that, and I'm actually interested to hear. Like, is this, because I've never really looked it up or anything, is this a technique that's achieved by actually messing up data, or is this something that's it is? So it is. It's not done like in post.
See, because I saw someone when this whole thing started or whatever, I had someone who was really into that and like experimental music, but he wasn't actually doing any of that himself.
Right.
He was playing around with it like as a plugin or something like that for After Effects and being like, hey, look what I can do. But like, I don't know.
So is it something where you purposely remove iframes, or you purposely encode it wrong?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So basically, back then, now they have really easy apps that make it a lot faster and easier to do. Back then, you had to kind of find the worst editing apps that were in the market that would do such a terrible job that it would just butcher the footage.
Yeah.
So you'd go through and you would demux the footage and kind of essentially throw it from a progressive full stream down to a compressed version of itself. Then go through, and the theory was each time that you had a cut, there was the iframe. And so if you removed the iframe, you removed all of the header data for that shot, because everything was a difference frame there afterwards. So as you rip that out, you now would basically just be getting difference frames that are pushing their way through the previous shot.
Yeah.
The interesting thing.
Wait. I'm confused.
So
what are you doing this in the first place?
Well.
So back then there was, let's see here, there was a couple different softwares that we would use for the compression itself, and then what was the name of this thing? It was I'll have to dig it up. It had a penguin icon.
Handbrake?
No, it wasn't Handbrake. It had a little penguin icon.
Penguin icon. Sounds familiar.
And it was Avid. It sounded like Avid. It was like Avi Demuxer or something like that. I'll dig it up and I'll show you guys a link for it. But yeah, it was this like old garbage software. Actually, you know what? If you look on YouTube, one of the guys that I originally was working with, this guy Bob out of New York, did a full tutorial and kind of breakdown on it right up front. But it was and he went through really detailed the old one. Now there's like Datamosh Studio, which is a really great self-enclosed package, or you can even do it inside of After Effects with the plugin as well. But of course, you know, it also turned into one of those things where like you do it once and then you're only ever hired for what people know you do. So then I have for the next 5 years people wanting me to Datamosh.
Right.
And I at one point just deleted the software from my computer, being like, oh, sorry, you know, that proprietary system that I was using is gone. But I can recommend you to someone else.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, so it's like in a regular good like working MPEG, it's every frame is what the difference is from the last frame. So when you change scenes, the computer automatically, if you have a cut to another scene, the computer automatically puts that frame in there and says, start over, this is a brand new frame. It's not a change from the last frame. So when you remove that change frame, and it goes into another scene, it doesn't do that. It's trying to do the change from the last frame, which was a completely different scene, and therefore you get the weird...
Yeah, and then
interesting. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And then you start learning about motion vectors and color values and what carries what data. So like if you wanted to be able to have a setup, like you start learning like how the mosh actually reacts properly. So like, okay, well if I want to have just one object blow through someone's head, I got to make sure it's on black because black carries no information. White carries a full blast out. So, you know, and then colors are because luminosity would do a lot of the work, and also like a very strong red, green, and blue would also do a lot of work to kind of shred through an image. But then if you wanted it to just kind of get really liquidy and you started learning like all these tricks. So like, oh, okay, well if you take the shot and you Twixtor it to like 600%, Datamosh that, you get this really nice liquidy kind of inky feel to it, then bring it back in and then speed it back up, and all of a sudden it feels like it's just like water rushing over someone's face. So you start learning it again, like anything else, it's a tool, it's a technique, and any technique can be abused and can be manipulated, And
how did you even come up with this in the first place?
Well, when we were working on MGMT, we were talking with Ray, who's the director, and he had been playing around with this thing a little bit, and he was kind of curious to play with it because there was an artist out of, I think, Japan who was doing this actually as like high art. And so he would do huge installations of just data mosh, and that was his video art. And Ray had come and Ray had kind of stumbled upon it, wanted to kind of explore it. This guy Bob had started kind of doing some digging into it, and then we jumped in. And so the guy that on our side, Ryan Bartley and myself, were kind of digging in and figure out like, okay, well, how can we get this worked into a workflow and get something that can get predictable results out of it.
Right.
And so, but like, it's like anything. It's like, how did you meet that guy you bumped into a bar? It's just all happenstance, and it's just what tickles your fancy, and then you start digging in further. I'm sure there's a lot of other really cool techniques I've never dug into because it just didn't seem initially fascinating.
Right.
But this one was something where it was, you just got so many great happy accidents that we're like, dude, this is just too good to not have seen the light of day.
I really like the idea of breaking things on purpose,
Oh yeah.
It's just, it's just such a great, it seems like something good always comes out of that, and not just in our field. Like there's what's the name of the show, Monster Factory? Have you seen the show Monster Factory? And the whole basis is just trying to break the character creation system inside of a game, essentially, and it's the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know, like something that I always, and this also came, I think, probably from like the era that I started, but when I had guys who were photographers and and audiophiles next to me that loved 4-track, and so there's always this element that like you wanted to kind of recreate the analog in digital, right? You wanted to kind of create this. It wasn't a matter of the photorealism. It was actually more a matter of that soulfulness of like, there's something like beautiful about how like a Lomo, there's these like little Russian cameras called Lomos, and just the kind of photography that you could get on them with these crappy little cameras was incredible, and it was unique, and there was something special, and we would kind of call it the ghost. There was this like something else that was in the image, and that's been, I think, this like driving factor of like always trying to find some way to create this analog, this happy accident, this like breath of air inside of the digital, and not be too overtly prescribed on your approach or the surface tension of the final image. That process of getting to there, that happy accident, is the biggest part of the creation process. It's not just racing to this beautiful final frame for me, and that's and again, and so this shouldn't be taken as like like don't care about the final frame. Of course, it needs to look good, but but again, that comes from more of the fine art background of it's how did you make it? What was the process you went through to make this thing? Those are the things that matter. Anyone can go over and try to execute your exact same final frame. That is, but that route that you take to get there, what things you learn along the way, and how the piece reveals itself to you. You talk to certain sculptors, and they talk about how the clay kind of reveals itself to you as you continue to shave away and to kind of mold it. There's this back and forth that's happening with it. And if you take the right approach with, I think, even digital media, that also can reveal itself a little bit, where it speaks a little bit back to you on like where it's supposed to be going and how to get kind of those ephemeral kind of emotive qualities out of what you're trying to do.
So I'm sure I know the answer to this. So what are your thoughts on faking that on Instagram and Instagram in general, I guess, is a good topic for this industry as well. The Instagram culture of motion graphics.
Well, here's the thing. Social is social, and there's this aspect of wanting to present this idea of you're living your best life. Sure, that's fine. But projects, if you're looking to grow as an artist, Instagram can be beneficial and can also be detrimental. Instagram allows you the ability to showcase a body of work in a really fast fashion. That someone can look at your page and see, this person has a style, great. They're a packageable product, and people now turn that into a career structure, and it can be a bit of a trapping at times. But trying to fill that out and trying to bloat that catalog too quickly and not allow yourself time to just go through and make without necessarily being too much of an art historian on yourself as you're doing it, I think is really important. I mean, faking is faking, and if you're trying to hit and jock a look, if you're trying to make something to sit next to someone else, for me, I have a problem with that. Because in my mind, that's not why I make things. I don't make things for it to sit next to someone else or to be part of a thing. That's not to say that I'm not inspired by elements and you're not complimented if someone compares your work to something else. But that targeting of like, I want to be that artist, I think is a little worrisome. Because ultimately, I'm kind of of the opinion that in our career, specifically motion design, you're being asked to be at some level of creative, that you're being asked to be a visual problem solver for someone else, and you need to be able to be multilingual when that comes into play. And so one of the trappings with a lot of the Instagram hyper focused artistry can be that you get really good at this one style of execution.
Right.
And that's great, but that's going to be a difficult issue for you down the way when someone says, you make incredible work and I love the work that you do. So we'd like to bring you in and we'd like you to run a team. Okay. Well, now you have a team. And that team has different styles and different approaches and different ways that they want to do things. And then you get a project that doesn't look like that body of work that you've done. Now, do you know how to do it? Have you been aware enough of your process and other processes of the creation of, that you've been participating in for all this time, that now do you know how to do a different trick?
Right.
And for me, that was always like the terror. And mind you, I was molded in a slightly different way because I never freelanced. I went from school. I did like 2 years at a really at this one cable network for horse racing of all things, and then I taught myself After Effects on the job, became their head designer, and then left and then started Ghost Town. And so immediately I was thinking about this in a way of like, okay, I need to be able to deliver on anything that a director is going to ask me to do. So if that's hyperreal, if that's cartoony, if that's this, if that's that, I have to be able to be anything because it's my job to be the guy who answers that problem.
Yeah.
So that multifaceted kind of approach made me really have to think about how do I break down an image? What does it take to actually make all of these different kinds of things? Because they're all different recipes. And I have to be fluent in all of them. So, the short answer, or the shorter answer to this is, I just would tell people to be wary of any project that you're doing that doesn't really force you to get in trouble and figure your way back out of it. May not necessarily be challenging your aggressive growth, because it's very easy to get into a pattern and a habitual approach of how, what can I whip up in a fast process versus being able to say, okay, let me fail for a little while here and not worry so much about where this is going. I have 3 different look devs that I'm doing right now that, I could share. It would make me look like a buffoon because they're not ready, and I want to spend time on this thing. And if I crack it, I'm going to be really excited because I've never made this thing before. I've never made something that looks like this, that feels like this. Yeah. That for me is worthwhile. Like, that's growth. That's something where it's like, awesome. I've now hit a new spot. I use this metaphor of like camping spots, where if you spend, if I'm ever in a camping spot that has too many other people around me, it's time for me to go deeper into the woods. It's time for me to find a new camping spot.
I like that. I like that. Yeah,
that's
You
good.
know, and so like when I initially like went over to Glitch and the data mosh and all that kind of stuff, there wasn't really many of us around, and so I had fun. I wasn't really too worried about bristling up to other people or being a Glitch artist at the time, and then it became a thing, and all of a sudden it blew up, and metaphorically, someone has the RV and the TV set, and the kids are running around back there, and I'm like, this is not where I wanted to be. So you pack up and you run a totally different direction, and say, cool, I'm going to start over again.
Yeah,
and that's liberating for me to be like, cool, I'm going to completely change my style.
Tesla Rock says Instagram is good for low self-esteem. You get likes even if you don't deserve them, but it's not the platform for artists or new artists to grow and get better. There's a link I'll put in the show notes. It's from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, his TED Talk, and he's speaking on why you do certain things, and how craving attention actually makes you less creative. And that's a perfect example with this Instagram stuff, because if you are creating with the sole intent of getting Instagram likes,
right,
there's nothing you're going to learn from that. And we talked about that a lot, but he hits on this whole culture of just all people want are the likes,
Right. This is something that we talked about a couple years at SIGGRAPH. It was a constant conversation that we were all having about how it's cool that, see, me personally, I'm just now really getting into Instagram and I'm liking it more and more. I don't post as many things on there. I've probably only got 5 posts, but I really enjoy the story parts of it.
Yeah.
Because it allows me to see like a glimpse into people's life and what they're doing and stuff like that. And I feel like the posts that I post on Instagram are going to be work that I'm working on. And then the stories can be more of my life and my personal things and whatever, know?
Right.
But like one thing that we talked about, or that a lot of us were talking about, was you can have someone on Instagram who has really good work. And this is something that you were kind of touching on, Brandon, where it's like, they're really good. And then you bring them into a studio and it's like, I don't really know. I don't know really what I'm doing.
Right.
Right.
It's like this person has amazing like look dev or amazing work, and the lighting and everything is good, but you don't know how much of that like they straight up like ripped off camera angles, or like someone straight up redid someone else's work and stuff like that.
And that's the thing, is like how you don't really get a great sense a lot of the time with it's specifically in motion design. You don't get a great sense of what their process is of getting to that image, and how literate they are in other forms of image making. And when you're part of a team, you have to, especially nowadays, you have to be flexible. We're all pseudo generalists in some way, shape, or form. So and so it becomes difficult. It's like all of a sudden I graduated in 2004, and I'm just now starting to have like moments where I'm realizing like these things that my professors would say, and I wanted to punch them in the throat. And now all of a sudden I'm like, well, man, they kind of were right. Where I had this one professor who was just, he changed my entire, I had two main professors, but this one really changed my entire view of how I make work. And this is guy, Gary Simmons, and famous sculptor, done a whole bunch of cool stuff. He's in the museums. And I remember showing him a bunch of my work early on, because I got in via scholarship because I knew how to render. I knew how to draw well and paint. And so and that's why I was in there on, and I felt like that was enough. It was just enough to be able to execute visually at a high level. And and he's like, that's great. You'll be someone's awesome artisan, and you'll never be asked to make a decision. And I was like, come on, like, kind of, up yours. But then as time went on, he continued to kind of explain that your ability to make the right choice in why you're making what you're making is what's going to set you apart from people. And so that's the thing with the Instagram issue of like getting too siloed in any one look, is that you now become too tight of a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And now you, as a piece, if your look is too concentrated, you're going to get called on. Now you'll always be called on to do certain things, but you're going to be called on to just do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately in this career, you're only hired to do what people have seen you do.
Right.
So if that's what you want to do, and if that's what you want to make over and over again, cool, do it. Just keep making that and keep putting that out there, and that'll be what you do.
Or if you want to ride that wave for a while and make a little money for the meal and not the reel, and try and then move on to something else, you know.
Yeah, you know. So, but that aspect of like trying to branch out, trying to explore, trying to fail early, fail often, it, you know, I feel like that's not something that the Instagram and social media platform really helps push you as an artist to do. That's where your artist relationships start coming into play. People who are interested in what you're up to, who, you know, are, you know, is having that community, and having someone who says, it's, you know, it's kind of whack what you're like, someone who can actually give you like good feedback on what you're trying to do. You know, and yeah, I can tangent into 13 other areas, but I'll shut down there.
Okay, well then let's move on to another topic that I know you're gonna super. What's up, Matt?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I've got another thing that another subject, but go ahead. We'll get to it.
This is the subject that was.
We got time.
This is the subject that was on our Slack, last week.
All right, actually, before you jump into this, then let me ask you, Brandon, this, because you know, and Dave, if you're able to, are you able to bring up those links that he sent us?
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling he may want to reference these.
Yeah.
So this is something that you and I talked about at SIGGRAPH a couple of years ago, when I first met you. You know, and like literally, I sat there and listened to you talk for probably 2 or 3 hours. You know, just like really immersed in what you were saying, because, you know, it's so much, it's so different than what you normally hear from people, you know. Something that I asked you when we were chatting was, what is it that you want to see from people? What is it that interests you? What is it that gets you excited? Since a lot of the works that you see on Instagram or something like that are so similar in their look, and you know, the data moshing stuff, that was new, that was something different, that was something that people hadn't seen before. You know, what is it for you that excites you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and the stupid easy answer is something different, for God's sakes. But but really, the thing that I'm looking for these days is just seeing people experimenting in some way, shape, or form, of seeing their hand in the creative process, of seeing different aesthetics getting brought to the table, seeing different reference points being used and being obvious inside of the attempts that they're trying to do. There's a flatness right now. The echo chamber has gotten so tight and the feedback is so quick that I'm just desperately looking for anyone who's doing something that feels like they're pulling visual reference from a different medium altogether.
Right.
You know, like trying to find someone who is referencing, you know, painting or sculpture or music, or, you know, different elements of, you know, someone who finds a great lens that does weird stuff with imagery and they're trying to recreate it. You know, I mean, I think that's why, what's his face from Arnold, that does all the insane renders.
From Arnold?
He works for Autodesk. What is his name?
Is it one you sent us? Is it one of the links you sent us, or no?
No. Most of those guys are painters, but I was gonna reference, like he does stuff where you see like a face and it's like just completely blown apart and like inky and ripped apart, and it's all using the it's using some of the displacement systems. I'm sure Chad knows. But like when you see something that that feels viscerally different. That feels that like this was made differently than anything that I've seen. There's an emotive quality to that. And it doesn't have to be totally experimental. You know, there's a ton of experimental artists that I like to follow, and there's also more traditional artists that I like to follow. But when you see someone playing with things a little bit differently, when you're seeing someone a little more imbalanced with their aesthetics, and there's more of a kind of an offshoot, there's just something really viscerally satisfying about seeing that. And even if you can see that, like, oh, the execution probably still, like, they're in their process, but it's going somewhere, like, that means so much for me as an artist to see. And it's why I've really taken to so like I had the opportunity, thanks to Steve Teeps and Matthias, I got to go over to Lightbox a couple weeks ago and wander around the floor there. I was part of a panel with some other incredible artists, James and Blake, and then you go and you walk around, you see these illustrators, and it's funny because I go to SIGGRAPH, I go to a lot of these things, and I don't care. I'm not worried about how I look, or, oh yeah, hey, there's that guy, I know that guy, he does cool work. You walk into this place and you see these guys who are executing at such a high level, at just, I mean, masterful levels of work that these artists, these sculptors and illustrators are doing, and you're like, I'm a total fraud.
Yeah.
I can't hit the fine-tooth point that this guy's existing on. I could only hope to ever even get 20% of the way towards the level of execution that this person over here is functioning at. I felt like a total fraud, and it was great. It was great to be surrounded by people who you felt just blew you out of the water.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that they were making just looked fundamentally different. The DNA of what they were making just looked fundamentally different from what I was doing. Yes, I mean, we all suffer from a version of imposter syndrome. Thank you, Kevin. Because ultimately what we do, like, we're not saving lives. We're not doctors. Like, we make imagery and media in high pressure situations for people that make unrealistic requests for us. So of course we all suffer from imposter syndrome because we're in this made up medium that totally fills an increasingly verbose need for more and more and more media. So someone has to make it, but I mean, you know, it's not like we're flattening out roads or turning the power on for anyone, you know? So yeah, I think our industry is very symptomatic to imposter syndrome because you're inundated with incredibly high levels of work. And there's also this fact of like, I don't even know if I'm good at what I'm doing.
Right. Because I think, you know, coming out of school and going into this profession, me personally, like, I was actually very surprised. I would kind of hide the fact that I was looking up YouTube videos how to do something, you know, for the first little while. Right. And then I get to a studio where I find that everyone is looking up YouTube videos in order to figure out how to do one in particular thing. I felt like a fraud, you know, doing that initially. And I felt like I should have known everything coming out of college, you know?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What did you study?
Video production. It was just video
same
production.
Here.
Yeah.
Same for you, Dave?
Same,
yeah,
for the most part. Yeah, I mean, I had experience in 3D, but it's just because I was self-teaching, you know, and I would just apply those techniques of video to what I was doing with my, you know, random copy of 3D Studio Max that I got somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
gray market.
Yeah.
See, I never had a problem with looking at tutorials, but like I was always very quick to be like, I don't know how to do this, but I'll figure out how to do it, and I'll look. And I'm sure you know, especially like when I switched over and was doing the stuff for Dreamcorp. I mean, I was crawling through EJ's list of trying to like really deconstruct what he was doing and how he was thinking about this stuff, so I could reapply that in what I was up to. But that's because I didn't study software.
Right.
I didn't study production. So my emphasis was about being right and being knowledgeable and accurate in the aesthetics and that vernacular and that decision making of what I was going to make. How I was going to make it was always transitory. If I have to get out a camera to do it, or if I'm going to do it in CG, or if this guy's going to help me make something up over here, that never mattered. It was just what we were trying to kind of get to is that fertile kind of was the kernel of the idea something interesting to do.
Right.
But yeah, I always felt really free in the fact that, like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, even to this day, I don't know what I'm doing. The first thing I think I say each time I have a Maxon presentation is, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, so I don't know.
And what about? I want to get on this subject because it's such a big thing,
Yeah.
especially this
Let's
week.
do it. It's a good segue.
And it's the topic of schools and whether or not this is the big thing in the Slack, whether or not you should go to a traditional school, the brick and mortar, whether or not you should do the online class thing, which is better, should it be a combination of the two? It was a really heated yet very civil debate.
It was a civil discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
which is nice.
I think I really liked getting your opinion on that because I felt like it was different than everyone else's for the most part.
Sure. Doesn't mean it's correct. Doesn't mean it's special. So here's my thing: is I loved my college experience. I was very, very fortunate. I was there on scholarship. I am privileged. I get that. What I learned in school is still reaping benefits today. And the notions of process, the theory, all of these other things were all incredible. But what was even more incredible for me is I met in this incredible group of people. I lived in a house just off of campus on Bonsai, and in that house we had film directors, people in music, writers, cinematographers, art, film theory, were just some of the people that were all living in the house together. And everyone, we lived there for 3 years, and by the end of it, everyone was like this like archetype of their own personality and got really, really into what they were doing. And I bring that up because I learned how to animate from my friend TK, who is a musician, because he taught me pacing and dynamic and rhythm. I learned thinking about the composition of the image through my friend Matt, who was a crit studies major. You know, there was the elements of the ghost in the image was something that we all talked about. My other friend introduced me to Italo Calvino, who is this Italian writer, and I just went madly. You know, I loved his work. Invisible Cities is still one of my favorite books. These kinds of like chance interactions where you're meeting people who are also creative but in different sectors of the field is incredibly important to the underpinnings of, I think, what the motion design world was originally founded on, in my mind. Now, I'm saying all that as a preamble of what informs my ideas, because I've spoken to a lot. You know, I've really been trying to go directly at people and not just subtweet. You know, what people's opinions are, but really try to engage them in a conversation. I believe that the new online education that is out there now is a benefit to the industry.
Right.
I do not believe that this is a binary conversation of you can either do college or you can do this.
Right.
I don't think anyone's suggesting that,
Right.
but it comes across that way, especially when you hear a phrasing of like, well, you can get a $250,000 in debt, or you can go to School of Motion, or go to, you know, and that's the one that triggered me, because I'm like, well, it's not a fair comparison in any way, shape, or form. Like, there is no person there that's going to be teaching you the art, like the deep art theory elements that drive the creative decision making that really is going to affect where the industry is going.
Mm-hmm.
So I see in my mind, for those of us who have access to school, it is a missed opportunity to not participate in a collegiate style education that is a well-rounded education that makes you a more well-rounded person.
Right.
School of Motion and a lot of these other ones will teach you how to execute. It's like a mini art center. And I see that as an incredible turbo booster on your ability to be a proficient motion graphics artist or designer.
Right.
And I do not question that in any way, shape, or form. And there's Learn Squared, there's there's School of Motion, there's a bunch of them all out there. But I go back to when I was running GT and I had everyone coming out from Gnomon who had incredible looking stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this stuff looks incredible. And I bring them in and they were worthless. They were absolutely worthless. I fired no one faster than someone from Gnomon because they only learned how to do it the right way. And I was like, well, we don't do anything the right way here. So we just weren't a good fit. But my main point is that there's different kinds of education, and the purpose that they're serving for you is, in my mind, different. A 4-year education or a 2-year education is a loan that you're taking out on yourself. You're investing in yourself and giving yourself a moment to breathe coming out of high school, where you can try to figure out your footing and take a second to make the next major decision that you're going to do in your life. School of Motion and these other things are a very targeted approach that is going to get you into this thing quickly. Now, what I just described are 2 different questions that are being answered.
Right.
All right. So if you want to be a motion graphics artist, is the fastest way to get into motion graphics through a collegiate education or through an online education course? Right now, probably an online education course. But in 10 years, are you going to be a better CD, art director, technical director, even executive creative director by doing an online education course, or by doing a larger, more broad collegiate study?
Right.
And I would pose, based on the nature of the education that exists right now, the wider spectrum collegiate study will probably yield you a different kind of a career than what a School of Motion will yield you right now. Now, that being said, I think it's going to morph and I think it's going to change in the coming time. But as of right now, that's kind of where we sit. Now, that being said, for people who are international, people who don't have access to college in the same kind of way we do, this whole subject changes entirely. And so that's why we can't have like a single answer for it. It's why I've almost been wanting to have more of a roundtable discussion about this, where you get some of the different voices in the room, because it really is going to come down to the person who's approaching this thing. What is their access to to college? What is their financial situation? All of these things are going to make a difference in what is the best decision for them to go through. But if you're going to ask me right now, is an online education a full proper replacement for a 4-year university education? No.
Yep.
Not at all.
And I will to piggyback off of that thought. I look at, so I went to, when I graduated high school, I originally was like, all right, I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to start taking all your general classes, so on and so on. I failed out of probably 3 community colleges because I just did not care about any of that stuff,
That's right.
And so my brother went to the Art Institute of Dallas. I don't necessarily recommend, and I can say that as an alumni of the Art Institute of Dallas.
Right.
He went there for graphic design, and he's like, hey, they have a video program. I had done video in high school and I really enjoyed it. So after failing out of 3 community colleges, because I didn't want to do history and I didn't want to do English and I didn't want to do all these other classes, I decided, all right, if I'm going to spend the money to do something, spending money will influence me in order to do something, bigger.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Art Institute, and I found it funny that within the first few weeks we had hands-on cameras, and we were learning kind of some of the theory. Most of it was all, this is how you do this,
Right.
and so, and other friends who were in the same program at a 4-year school were still going through all the basics of, history, English, math, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And I was like, oh, we're so much better because we are getting into this sooner, and I will graduate before you, and I'll be in this industry, making money before you and stuff like that. But
Right.
what I didn't realize after I got out of the Art Institute was how little I knew about the world in general. I knew how to push these buttons. I knew how to white balance a camera. I knew about framing and composition, but that was about it.
Right.
I decided to go back to community college to learn classes just of things that interest me, And so I decided that I was going to kind of go into a whole different field. I honestly, after I got out of the Art Institute, I wanted to be a doctor because I hated video. But then I had to take physics and chemistry, and I was like, okay, well, maybe being a doctor isn't for me,
Right.
And so I kept going and taking all these classes. I got a second associate's degree, because I went back and I took those biology classes, and I took calculus, and I took all these other ones. But what I'll tell you is, taking a stupid class like biology and taking a stupid class like calculus, it's amazing how much they interweave with the stuff that we're doing in 3D motion design, as weird as that is. You don't realize when you're making a Bezier curve, you're actually doing some sort of calculus with Newton something. I forgot what it was about, but I remember thinking it when I was taking the class.
Right. Well,
But-
and that's the thing. It deepens your reference point. It deepens your context of what you're bringing to the table, not just how you interface with the system.
Right.
And that's really the thing, is bringing more to the table than what you're interfacing with just the system. I get concerned with some of the conversation right now, because it's symptomatic to the Instagram conversation that we just had and social media in general. It's symptomatic to, I think, the current contemporary design trends that are going on, that I'm starting to see people getting bored of, thank God. But there's this visual illiteracy where, because of the fact that the echo chamber got so tight, because the reference points became so specific, because the heroes became so heroic as far as like the people to emulate for the work in order to land the job, that it really narrowed and shrunk the footprint of what the work that was being made was. And when, for the old timers, motion design was originally considered mixed media.
Right.
It was a mixed media art. And for me, I'm kind of doing a saber rattle right now of coming back to my roots and coming back to a mixed media art form, of playing with the process, of playing with the inspiration. I don't look at motion designers anymore for my inspiration. I'm actually now following illustrators and painters, because that's just fascinating me right now. And I don't, and yes, there are studios that are doing really cool work, and there are studios who are even exploring the illustrative looks in a really cool way. Golden Wolf is just killing it right now.
Oh yeah.
Love Golden Wolf.
But the well-rounded education is such an important facet to bring more to the table than just your ability to execute on the frame. My decisions of why I make what I do and how I approach the visual answer for my director or for my client are influenced by the knowledge base that I have behind me, that is everything that is not part of the visual or the design world. Invisible Cities inspired how I would approach camera movements, and I almost actually went on to try to get a degree in neuroscience after school, because I was so fascinated.
You went the reverse David Ariev path.
Right. I wanted to, because I was so fascinated. I read the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And I was like, this is incredible, and this is so visually arresting, and there's so much mechanically that's happening with how we perceive information. I want to bring that back to how I'm making what I'm making. Like, these kind of outside influences are so incredibly important because they ask us to reach beyond what the tools are suggesting we should be making. And I think that's my big thing, is trying to find, when you ask about what do you want to see people making, it's like, I want to see people flipping things on their head a little bit. I had the incredible opportunity to work with Andrew Thomas Wang for Vivid this year, and like sitting in the initial conversations with him, and we were talking about like what the nature of the character design would be, and we're talking about like, well, how little do we need to show of a person for it to be recognizable as a person, and still, so that way it's more gestural and it's more ephemeral, and that it's more about a flow, and we're having these and he actually went to art school as well.
I see what you're talking about, because I'm actually looking at, this was for the Sydney Opera House, correct? Yeah. If you go to it's alchem.tv, alchem.tv/vivid-2019, you can see what he's talking about here. But yeah, I totally get what you're talking about. Like, these aren't like physical humans, but they've got that movement. It's
right.
Very Go ahead.
Yeah, and so we're thinking theoretically about like, how little do we need to show of the original mocap, and we're seeing everything as kind of a deconstructed process, that we're kind of combine ingredients and create dynamics in just the opposition of what we're balancing against each other. And we're referencing theater costume design and buarku puppetry and all these other things that have nothing to do with a PBR shading system.
Right.
They have nothing to do with a key light. That's all ancillary. That's all the final decision making. That's not why I'm doing it.
Right.
I'm not doing it for the lighting, for the light rig. I'm not doing it for the material sets. Those are all derivative of the emotion that I'm trying to hopefully get across to someone in the core essence of the piece.
See, and what's interesting about this is, hearing that breakdown, you've seen a lot of a few years ago, and then, slowly fading away right now, was this look, and you're going to hate me for not remembering who did the exact thing, where it was taking mocap data, and putting like the hair on it, and they were dancing.
Yeah, universal everything.
Yeah. And so that became super popular. Looking at this, it's almost like you took that and you we're not going to do the same thing. We're going to take the mocap data, but we're going to make something completely different with it.
Well, yeah, because basically, we were able to kind of come into this thing from different angles, and because we were thinking about so we thought about the whole thing actually like theater, and we originally planned out the show as actually a 5-act play, and so each character had to move and feel different in their nature. So even as we're sitting there doing the mocap running around on the mocap stage, we were influencing how she was moving, how she was approaching, because the eucalyptus is going to be, we're thinking this is going to be a sadder, more heavy character. We want you to be thinking about everything that you have is weighted with 170 pounds of weight on your legs, that there's this, just this Atlas aspect to you, versus the orchid, who was going to be kind of our, very Brazilian, Belle the Ball kind of vibe. And so that influenced our character design, it influenced the mocap style that we would do, it influenced the color palettes that we would choose. But we're referencing from all these other places, and not a single thing was really about the 3D render. The 3D render would show itself obviously inside of the process of creation. but how we kind of got to there and how we kind of made these decisions and being intentional about, so that way each character felt unique and honest to itself, and it felt like it was living in a different tone, not just in the surface tension of what it was made of, but in its very essence, you know. But these are for me the bonus parts of the conversation. Everything else is execution, and execution can be fun too, same way that building a table can be fun.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because, you know, yes, you're talking about the kind of the pre-production aspect of this. You know, once you go into production, you get to explore and figure out how you're going to do this. Does any of that get you excited at all?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I love what I do all these years later because I really do genuinely enjoy every step of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but each one scratches a slightly different itch. You know,
Gotcha.
The creative problem solving that happens in the beforehand, where we're napkin sketching stuff and spitballing ideas and walking around and talking and just pulling reference and what if we tried this thing, or what if we took this thing, try to mix it and bring in this thing, you know, and you're kind of like combining different like elemental aspects to see, okay, this feels like a really fertile combination. Let's try to act on this. And then you try to act on it, and then you're trying, you know, and then you're playing, and then the actual production process comes into play, and now you're doing the technical problem solving of like, oh my god, like this thing is going to be a 170 gig Alembic file. This won't work. I can't render this thing, you know, or you know, aesthetically, like, okay, it's just not moving right, or the pacing of the whole overall piece is wrong. Like, there's all these aspects, and it's all problem solving, and for me, it's what keeps it fun. You know, if I ever feel like I'm keying, if I ever feel like I'm keying green screen over and over again, I know that I've kind of lost my way a little bit, because that was originally why I left VFX. Is I didn't want to have it be a prescribed perfect route each time for me. I wanted it to be an exploratory thing, you know, where you have that triangle of like, you know, our job is to kind of spin the web that hits the budget, you know, it's that time quality, you know, triangle. But our job is to kind of like be that little perfect center point, to be the spider who spins the web that can kind of connect it all just right and hit just that point that no one else in the room was quite being able to communicate in a clean fashion.
Well, it's almost like it's not quite breaking things like earlier, but it's that taking something and using it in a different way.
Right.
That always seems like it turns out into something really cool. And instead of just doing the same thing over and over. And the thing about that is it's frustrating for some people to try and come up with something like that. I know for me and for a lot of people, they are more technical than creative. It's not that I'm not creative at all. It's just that sometimes I struggle more with creativity than with technicality. And for some people, it's the other way. Some people are super creative, but they have no idea how to execute. You know, but that can be symbiotic for someone like me. To, you know, if someone's like, well, I really want to do this crazy mashup of this thing. How can we do that? I don't know how to do that. And I'll be like, oh, totally, I got you. Like, I know how we can do that. But I would have never come up with that idea. So, and it's for getting rid of that frustration. Some people, for me, it's my frustration. I never feel like I'll be able to do something like what you have here. I would have never thought of that in a million years. You know, and what do you say to people who want they have creativity, they want to get to something like this, but they have a really hard time trying to come up with these ideas before they can execute?
I think this is really where I come back to the idea of finding different references of what you want to chase down. So the listing of a lot of the artists that I gave to you guys before today, or before going on today, these are all people that feel like they're just a little outside of my reach, that I don't quite know how to make what they're doing here, but I'm gonna try. And I think that whole getting out of your comfort zone aspect of this is really where I think these ahas are going to come from, where all of a sudden your technical process begins to evolve. You start running through the sidewalls of what the tools you feel like are supposed to be doing, and you start using them and misusing them, and that's like that's beautiful. Like that, like, you know, as things become more streamlined and rendering becomes easier, and we can sculpt, you know, a ZBrush model that has a gajillion points on it. It's like, okay, well then now what? How can I misuse this? How can I, you know, go Kool-Aiding through a wall that I was not intended to go through?
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, but it's funny. One thing when I would always get stuck creatively on this stuff is, and again, I'm going to go back to school here. So I was in a design class, and when we would be asked to design logos, at the end, everyone would have to go put their logos up on a wall, and we all walk across the room, and we're standing there. And from 30 feet away, you could tell the people who designed a logo on the computer versus a person who designed a logo with a pencil and a piece of paper.
Right.
And it came from the fact that a lot, especially in college, right, that a lot of the people who were designing the logos on the computer to start off with were kind of, and again, this is 2003, the iPad was not, you know, wasn't even, yeah, you know, wasn't even a thing. But they were trapped in Illustrator using the standard tools, circle, pen tool, slight Bezier that you're using a mouse to do. And so you could tell that they were trapped inside of the wheelhouses of what the software said, this is what I can do. And versus someone who drew out the mark and then said, well, I'm going to ask you to do this, you know, software. And it forced them to try to think of a different way to go about doing it. They would use whatever tool they had available in order to execute it, because they were trying to hit a mark that the software hadn't prescribed was a mark it thought it could hit necessarily. And so that's why, like, you know, when I'm talking about like trying to pull reference from other places, you know, if you feel like you're stuck right now creatively, you might be getting too deep in the weeds on the myopic aspects of the software itself, which can be really gratifying to like crack some of these eggs and to really like have an understanding of like how best to do this thing in the most efficient setups, you know, to be functioning under. But I really feel like you don't really start accessing your knowledge base of the software until you start having to do something that isn't part of that standard pipeline structure. Like that's why like John Bosley on the Slack is so incredible, is because someone asks like a kind of some absurd question and he finds some way to recombine everything that the person just said into an executable setup, you know, because he knows how to do everything 37 different ways. And you know, that's where I think some of the magic for me kind of comes from. You know, it's like, you know, there is a bunch, you know, that's why also why cinema is so incredible. And, you know, coming out of After Effects, you know, I think it's why there's such kindred spirits, is because there's no real right way to do it. There's an optimum way to do it, but there's no right way to do it. And so depending upon what you're trying to do, you can get it done 1,000 different ways. But I just think just trying to do something that you don't know how to do, I think you'll find a lot of gratification and a lot of exploration and a lot of growth inside of that. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. You know, yeah, because you can go through Behance or whatever and, you know, kind of get an idea. Yeah. But I love the idea of taking ideas from outside mediums and stuff like that in order to influence you in the way that you can work or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like there's a synesthetic quality to it of like, how do you translate this idea over into your medium? You know, even like yesterday, I ran across this thing on Twitter that where this woman had gone blind, and then her basically her brain remapped her ability to see around the damaged optical area or a portion of the brain over to a different subsection, so she could only see motion.
Interesting.
She was
T-Rex.
blind. Yeah.
Like a T-Rex.
Yeah, basically, exactly. So yeah, so if you're her kid, you know how to not get in trouble. Just stand real still. Once I find you, you're done. But like I found that immediately arresting. Of like, oh, how would I show just the ability to detect motion and no element inside there? Because she talks about that she can see the shape of things moving, but she's blind to someone's face, and that she's now starting to get to the place where colors are starting to show up, and she knows that they aren't the right colors, but she's seeing colors, and it's like that's incredible. Like I want to make that. I want to figure out how to do that.
Right.
So but again, that's not a lower third. So like when are you gonna have the opportunity to do those kinds of things? But it's but again, there's that aspect too of like you're only hired to do what people see you do, and so I think that is where honestly Instagram is the opportunity for a lot of people, and Twitter and social medias is like if you want to be hired to do something else, because these agency people are looking at this, and these directors are looking at Instagram too. They're looking for their own inspiration, and so if you can make something that looks different, they're going to hire you to do that different, because that you might have someone who that different scratches that itch that they didn't even know how to describe to someone. Yeah. Let alone include that in a deck.
And Instagram can be very exploratory in a way. You're able to post your works in progress and stuff like that if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So I think it's a pivot in how we generally are using it as a branding structure. But I was always inspired by Future Deluxe. When they first started out, they had a lab section that was actually more present than their body of work section. Yeah. And I thought that was brilliant, because you go digging through their labs, and then all of a sudden you see, and then they wove that around a Nike logo. Got it. But they were putting what they wanted to do out there in a good way, and then the brand would come through and be like, I want that. Cool, no problem. Like you're almost creating your own Chinese menu of things that you want to play with.
Right. That's what God, why is my mind gone blank now? Wolf.
Golden Wolf.
Gold. That's what Golden Wolf was talking about earlier this year at what was the conference? MDC.
MDC.
At MDC.
Yeah. It's being able to put that kind of stuff out there, I think, and get ahead of it. I mean, I don't know. You do have some control in the creative direction of where you go. It's just where you want to put the time into doing it.
Right. All right, Dave, you want to do it?
Okay. Beeple wants to join in the party here. So
here, watch this. Watch this. This is gonna be good. All right, once you add him in,
we're gonna add Beeple here. I have no idea what's going on right now. Let's see what happens here. Hopefully his mic and everything is working.
Oh, it's not going to. It's not. Come on.
All right. We'll wait until...
He's probably either on his phone.
Wait, what? Okay, this is shut video.
I hear you. You got to turn video on.
Yep. Hey, how's it going?
Yo.
There.
All right.
I told you, it's going to be on his phone. It's going to be on his freaking phone.
You got it. Can you turn it sideways?
Here, one second. Can we talk in a sec here? Sorry. Hey, wait, am I on this?
Turn it.
I'm like real
turn it sideways.
Yeah,
turn it sideways. You got vertical video syndrome. Turn it sideways.
Happy 200th episode.
Oh my gosh.
You're 2 episodes behind. Hey, good. You're just in time. You're just in time for People's People.
Episode.
Oh.
Happy 200th episode.
Turn the phone sideways.
Is it better if I?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
Okay, there it is. Okay, now I can.
Oh my gosh.
Dude. Am I in the middle or am I like?
Yeah, no, you're not. You're nowhere near the middle.
Yeah.
Where am I?
Go to the middle.
You gotta be right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this like? This is okay. There we go. Like it's so weird to be in the frame.
Yep.
Okay, there it is. There's the sweet spot.
Where are you at? What are you doing?
You're like 2 episodes behind, which is fine.
We'll just pretend.
It's just fine.
Well, I'm sorry I missed that episode. God damn it. Okay, there it is. I'm in the middle. I'm in the frame. Dude, this Unhide conference is insane. There's like 3,000 people at this.
Really?
It is nuts. This is the second year they've been doing it. And they've got like every night they have a party with like free drinks and like open bar and like food and stuff like for everybody who like signs up for this thing. Like it is absolutely ridiculous.
Where is it?
They've got like, what's up?
Where is it?
It's in Sao Paulo, and there's like a Facebook stage. There's like a Adobe stage. There's probably like 5 stages. They've got like days of workshops. The tickets are $150 for all 3 days, and that counts the like free drinks and like free food and everything. Yeah, it is just like absolutely.
This is our interview.
This feels like a promo.
With the ceiling.
Yeah, the vent.
What's up? Yeah, okay, because that's the thing. I have to hold it like, if you saw how I was holding it, so weird to stay in frame.
Oh man.
So tell us about your party.
I look like a super weirdo here.
It's okay.
Tell us about your party.
Brandon, hey, how's it going? Sorry to like hijack this here.
Oh,
super
no.
huge fan of your stuff.
Oh, dude.
Super huge fan. Been forever.
Mutual Admiration Society. I'm just enjoying hearing about this, so I'm gonna lean back and let you just keep talking there.
Yeah.
Hey, you're just in, Mike. You're just in time for Beeple's people.
Right.
Now, God.
Tell us about your party.
Oh my.
Tell us about your party.
Tell us about Control Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's in 2 weeks in LA. It's at God damn it. It's at Wisdom. Yeah, in LA there. So yeah, it should be a good time. They got like crazy like dome projections, like 360 dome projections. That we'll be projecting a bunch of visuals, and we'll have like showing a bunch of like dope motion design work there. So yeah, totally like free to get in. So yeah, there'll be a bunch. I think Andrew Kramer's coming. G Monk will be there.
Cool.
Cool.
Trying to think who else. Ash is being a little bitch, so he's not coming. So, do you want to send him some fucking? Do you want to send hate mail? Send it to Ash. Care of ashthorpe.com@gmail.whatever. I don't know. But yeah, no, should be a good time. So if you're in LA, or if you're like not in LA and you're flying across the country, right before your class reunion.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Wondered where you were going with that.
I think I'll do that then.
What's up?
Nothing.
I said I think I'll do that.
I think I will do exactly that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God damn this stupid Skype. Once again.
Well, you're walking like a mile right now.
Where are you going?
Take a picture of how I'm holding this phone right now to stay in the frame. Like I've got like a tiny window of where I have to hold it, and I have to hold it like super goony and like stretch forward like this.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
And I can't.
That's all good.
Dude, it's good. I appreciate having you guys on. I gotta like bounce here on this, but I just wanted to say congrats and yeah.
Well,
looking forward to 200 more episodes. This is definitely 200. The big 2-0.
Yeah, we appreciate you stopping by episode 200. That's
awesome. Yoki dog. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
all right.
All right, man.
Talk to you later.
Safe down there.
Awesome. Peace.
Bye. Oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
That's freaking good.
Freaking random cameo. He was like, yeah, I'm just gonna stop by, just whatever. And I'm like, just randomly? He's like, yeah. It's like, all right, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm sure it'll be very entertaining. He didn't disappoint. Anyway.
I just wanted to know where he was going in such a hurry.
I have no idea. I don't know.
You never know.
Half the time it's just a shot of the ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, wherever he was, they have a lot of work to do on the grates there.
Yeah, I know, right? They gotta get rid of that asbestos.
Yeah.
All right, I've got another question for you. I think that's probably a good time to switch topics, right?
Yeah, right.
I've got one more topic two more, not too long topics before we get to some links and some Beeple's people. My question for you is, first of all, where do you think that agencies, big agencies, are going, and where do you think smaller animation studios are going in the next 10 years with the way freelancing is going, the way some studios are
Good
shutting
question.
down, the way some agencies are shutting down? Where do you see all of that going?
Well, I mean, it looks like right now we're in kind of a reconsolidation phase. Um, so I think we're going to get a couple of major motherships that the agencies will kind of continue to keep glomming into each other or shutting down, mostly due to brain drain, as the Apples and the Nvidias and Microsoft keep eating the best talent from them.
Yeah.
And you're left with the junior producer from this, or this person now has to now take on two different departments because the person who's in charge of that is now gone. So, I mean, agencies feel, again, we all want to say they're going to be dead, they're going to be dead, they're going to be gone, they'll be beautiful.
Right.
But I don't know if they're necessarily going to be going anywhere in terms of a full all and out, because the agency does one job that a lot of smaller design houses have a difficult time doing, which is that you do business with who you're talking to. And so as an agency, for your sales team, you could be out there and you could be talking with them all the time, constantly in their ear, constantly in their face, and constantly present in front of them. And so as such, you can get your hooks in to get the work into you the best that you can. And for smaller design shops, they have a harder time being able to keep up with that, where because you're only doing business with who you're talking to and you're busy doing the work you've agreed to, it's hard to do the sales-based aspects of it. Most studios don't have a strong sales EPs or biz dev section of that's really helping trump up the work. That's two Trumpy references. I'm sorry for that. But so that being said, I do see consolidation with the agency. I do see them continuing to lose power year over year, and I don't see that changing anytime too soon. Because of the fact that, and this is also, I think, due to the fact that the ideas aren't that great, and I think that's the bigger thing. Like we look at like the Mad Men style agency where you have some big thinker coming in and just blowing the client away with an idea that they could never have thought of.
Right.
A take on the narrative of their brand that they could never have come up with themselves, because they just had, that was their job. Their job was to come up with these ideas. And you look at most campaigns and the level of discourse is so low. The access angle is so metrically driven that the client can do that themselves. They can find that same information that the agency has. And if the agency has a really good person whose take on things they tend to like, they'll just take them. Say, we'll offer you more, we'll give you better stability, and you can really grab the bull by the horns here and take us somewhere. And so, because of the fact that the level of discourse I see is dropping year over year, that the ideas are kind of continuing to get more watered down and more literal and more direct, it doesn't leave a whole lot of space for the agency to really be at it, aside from essentially being a bloat sitting on top of the production company.
Right.
So that's the trend that I'm seeing. And until I see someone really start shaking things up, I mean, I feel like that trend is just going to continue, and they just continue to kind of, marginalize themselves by not delivering anything more than just being matchmaker to a production company and post-production and, vendors. Like that portaling, the client can find on their own if they find the right producer from that agency. So that's that one. And I'm sure that, there's that, we could probably bring some people on here that could blow me out of the water with my opinions, but that's just what I'm seeing right now, year over year. for small shops, I'm super intrigued because, again, with the big shops, we're seeing consolidation. But one thing that I'm also seeing is I'm seeing erosion in the medium to large scale shops where that stratification between the CD and the freelance talent is getting so wide, and the level of understanding of the process it takes to make the final image is getting less and less and less. Where I'm getting pings and I'm having conversations with people where they bring in a whole host of freelancers to do a job, and they basically put a volleyball team on a bus to go see if they can win a football game, and
Right.
they wonder why they're not getting the results they want, and it's because the producing team, the CD team and the staff at the location may not have a full context of what exactly it took to make that final reference point that was in the deck if they didn't make the style frame themselves. And that erosion and that production and that producer heavy and just land the job, we'll figure it out later with talent approach makes for not a great place to work, and people start to leave. And the work, you could see that the work starts flattening out because the process that made them a lot of money starts just becoming more of a rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, we know how to make this, so then
Right.
this is just what we're going to make.
Mhm.
And that allows for those shops to go by the wayside, and then we wait for new ones to come take their place. And there's always that cycling aspect of like, oh, this one, this studio is ascending, this one is in its decline, and then eventually, they either like bottom out and like hit their like little threshold point where they kind of float along. But that turnover is kind of a natural part and parcel of it. There's a couple elements that I think are going to be influential for us, and it's going to come from the gig economy everywhere else, because we were really early into the game for the design industry, to the whole freelance world, and then the rest of the world kind of also went freelance, and everyone else got fired and then had to get taken on as freelance. And so it's going to be through the Ubers and the Fivers and all these other like little like one-off pop-em style setups that is going to start making changes to, I think, tectonically of how freelance works. And it'll have ramifications, and I think eventually there's always an ebb and flow of like, oh, people are going more full-time right now. Okay, people are going more freelance right now. And so that's always going to be kind of in a bit of a back and forth. I've seen the flow in both directions. But I mean, at this point here, I'm trying, I look back and it's like, there was a moment early on in my career where I saw a ton of small shops like explode like a cockroach invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Just around every corner was another new small shop, and they might be around for a year, they might be around for 5 years, or they might blow up and they might turn into one of the majors. And that relies on the economy, relies on a lot of kind of other factors inside of there. I think the next wave that we're going to get hit with, just in terms of sensation, is going to be we're probably going to start culling a little bit again, and shops will start consolidating, winding down, and
Mm-hmm.
readjusting themselves a little bit before we have a new kind of re-explosion of a bunch of other new small shops
Mm-hmm.
that kind of come about. But I think right now we're kind of in a contraction moment. But that kind of black hole that sucks in and then it re-explodes and then back in again, is that feeling has been kind of, I feel like we're on our like third or fourth rotation of that from my count. So it starts feeling a little old hat to a certain degree, and you're just always kind of excited to see who the next
Right.
who the next group is going to be that comes about.
And I think that's why people like Bart and Damer are successful. It's a small shop that started small, but it's also about that from the top down, knowing what is involved in a process.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't some hot shot who has never touched Cinema 4D trying to run the place. You know.
No, exactly. Well, see, and here's the thing: is there are CDs out there who aren't necessarily very versatile in the software platforms that they're asking you to use, but if they're not going to be knowledgeable on those tool sets, they need to bring something really big to the table. That's where some of the higher level people like someone like Karen Fong come into play, where it's like great education and approaches it from a very high level conceptual place, where no one else in the room is going to really be thinking about it at that same level. And so if you're going to be an off the box person, then you better really bring some intangible skills that separate you from all the on the box people.
And those companies need to be able to recognize that that's what they're bringing in, not just Joe Freelancer who has a copy of Cinema 4D.
Right. And again, I think that's that whole kind of process ignorance that's currently there as well, where where a producer just is in the like, I just want to jam as much candy in my mouth as I can as far as freelancers go, and just hopefully it works out. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people asking me to do stuff that you should never hire me to do that. Like, you should never hire me to do that. And but they just try to do it. They just they want to see if they can, as long as they have butts in the chairs. If the project fails and they don't hit the mark, ultimately it's this Joe Blow's fault who we're just going to not hire again.
Right.
Well, that's not a great way to run things. That's not a great way to build strong relationships. And that's something that generally I'm finding is happening in the larger scale studios that need to just throw all this. They have to ingest all these projects in order to meet that monthly nut.
Right.
And so they have to take the jobs that they probably don't want to take. And then they have to just figure out who they can put on it. And it just becomes this, self-fulfilling prophecy, versus a smaller studio who, there's a couple ninjas that you like to bring in. I guess those terminologies aren't really good anymore since we're in the like post 10Xer kind of thing. But like, there's certain people that you bring in to nail certain looks, do certain things, and you're not so worried about having them triple booked. And that is the advantage that you have with a small studio, where you can have a more, family atmosphere as far as like the relationship that you have with this freelancer.
Right.
You're not just you're not a number sitting in a bullpen wondering why you've been thrown onto the 4th job this week. I thought I was here to do this thing. I've done 7 jobs, and that other job was DOA when I got in here. Like, I never even got to work on the thing I wanted to work on. I've been doing all this other stuff. And there's this like bait and switch.
It's much like your comparison, the volleyball team going to play the football game. Barton used the comparison. Imagine if you're trying to play basketball and you're your ex team, you're the Bulls, right? And every week you got a whole new team.
Please, Dave, tell us
every week
the sports metaphor.
Let's do all the sports metaphors. You got to get the ball across the goal line. If you want to learn to swim, you got to jump out of the water. Don't forget to feed Bruiser. Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things that I like doing with talent that we bring on is, obviously you have to study their work. You have to study how they, like, what they're making, what they're tending to do, what are they showcasing, what do they seem to be proud of, because you need to get to know this person very, very quickly, and then, for people who I enjoyed the process of working with, they're good communicators, they were able to execute in a good fashion, and everyone felt good about working with them. The thing that I always do as a follow-up is, what do you want to do? What is the thing that I could ask you to do that you would be doing for free even if you weren't being paid to do it. Because I want to ask you to do that. I want you to be somewhere that you're super excited to be. And as long as that's a good answer, we're going to have a really good relationship moving forward. Because I'm going to try my best to always make sure, and Brandon will over here at BMO, we're always going to try our best to make sure that we're asking you to do something that you're stoked on doing. Because if you're not having fun doing this as a career, you're in the wrong place. There's a lot of better places to make money than in this industry. People aside. So you have to really be enjoying that process, and it's at least out here in LA. It's not always that fun. And so that's always a goal set of mine. It's like, what are you excited about doing? Where do you want to be in the next few years? How can I help you get to there? And it just better not be, I want to be a creative director. If the answer that I come back with is, I want to do creative direction, or I think I should be an art director, then I usually am like, cool. It's cool. Okay. Great. I will let you know when I need to take a risk on an art director. Versus being like, oh, I'm super inspired by this guy, or I've been trying to go down this avenue. Like, I want to know what you're actually excited about doing. And I think that's feedback that is, for freelancers out there, is beneficial to find. If you have a producer or you have someone who's working with you that is interested in you, be specific, because they're trying to solve specific answers. And I think it's really easy for us to get into this conversation. If you're an on-the-box person, somewhat on the box, hopefully, training up to be someone who's on the box, that the producer's the enemy. And they don't have to be. A lot of times they turn themselves into it. But if people ask you questions, if people take interest in you, it's important, I think, to understand how rare that is these days, and to try to strike up a relationship with that person. If they're asking these kinds of questions, if you try to respond back, try to dig in there. I've made really good friends with producers who took a half bit of interest in me, and they've become lifelong friends because they trust me. They trust my decisions that I will make and what I'm trying to get after, not just my results. The results are the results, and but if you're fully results based, you're going to become indifferent to 13 other solutions that they're going to have in front of them.
So a very similar question, I guess, in a way, would be, where do you feel like, with where the industry is going, where do you feel like the software is going, or where does the software need to go? Would probably be a better question.
Where does the software need to go? Well, I think we're all waiting for, at some level, the real-time shoe to drop and make our life a little bit of hell. Because that's going to be a pivot, and it's going to ask us to do things in a slightly different way. But I do think that the push towards real time is going to continue to infect all of our workflows, because no other sector of the computer visualization industry has more money going into it than games. So they're going to continue to dictate the direction in which all of our software is going, because they're the ones who are actually developing everything. We benefit on GPU rendering today because of the work that happened due to games originally.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue down that path because it's not going anywhere. I do think that there is a simplification that's continuing to happen as far as the tools go, where yes, you'll always have the Houdini, where things are that's going to continue to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the dark arts, and they'll keep adding new widgets and gizmos that you can build anything atom by atom. And then there's this inverse motion that's happening where you have the iPad and you have VR, which will eventually turn into mixed reality. And that's going to go into much more of this, like, more physical, kind of effortless style of creation. And so you'll have this kind of striation that happens between the two kind of mediums of creation. But I mean, it's just getting better for us ultimately.
Yeah.
Because but I think the concern for both is as things get easier and easier and easier to make, how as your restrictions fall off and you can make anything,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get hit with the hard decisions of what should I make.
Mm-hmm.
And so, look, I'm super excited for Adobe to come out with a Substance Painter that runs on my iPad, and I can be sitting, on my back porch painting, doing a paint job on a model and having a lot of fun doing it, or ZBrush on, in a mixed reality app. Like that's going to be awesome because it's just going to feel so natural and effortless, and and we know that that's where we're going because all the roads are leading towards there. But there's this thing that keeps bothering me a little bit with it, and it came up the other day in the Lightbox kind of panel discussion that we had, where I go back to the movie Alien, and I talk about it all the time. So people who know me are going to roll their eyes right now. But for Alien, which in my mind is still like one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever created, they had to make a decision because the suit fell apart during filming. Right? It stopped working. And they're like, well, now what? Well, turn off the lights. So they turned off the lights. Everything became keylit. And it's all about this thing skulking in the shadows. And they built this whole lighting setup that made the movie so much better. That they could only get the bits and pieces that would work. And there was this restriction, these constraints, these things that held them back from being able to do anything that they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And it made ultimately a better product because of it. Yeah. For the Star Wars people out there, like, when we look at the modern ones versus the old ones, where like when all the George Lucas ones came out in the early 2000s, it was garish. It was garish and colorful, and it was ultimately not what the other one was because they had no restrictions. They could do anything. Mm-hmm. And so there's something about the substance of product of when you can make anything. What do you make? Where is your restraint? And how did your decision making and edit happen? How those parameters are functioning. So that's, I think, a little bit for me. It's this big mixed bag. Like when I talk about the education, when I talk about the ease of use for software, when I talk about all of these things, it gets just very mealy and kind of unrefined when it's easy to make anything and you can make anything. So let's just make something, and it's all very disposable, and so everything kind of turns into this moment of kind of everything is watered down to a pair of new socks, where they're only new until the first time you wash them, and then there's like anything else that's out there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so maybe being, again, an old dog in this, like I yearn still for those emotions that I felt the first time that I watched the Criterion Collection, for Chris Cunningham, mm-hmm. or mm-hmm. The first time that you saw something that was just viscerally arresting. Like, this is just different. And the way in which they're telling the story, the form in which they're doing it in, I think that's even why. For me, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who is not in our industry, he's in the tech industry, and I was talking about this kind of watering down aspect, and I was like, well, okay, so let's look at like Spider-Verse, right, which is the easy one to reference, mm-hmm. where you have 1,000 Pixar style movies that all look about the same, and then you have Spider-Verse, and it doesn't mean that it has to put people off. It can still be a pop culture thing. It can still be accessible, but it's just being able to just be a little bit different on the process, being a little bit different on the approach, and all of a sudden it just feels like you're getting something new. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So much of the story was very similar to like the ways that other stories are told, but because they delivered it in a slightly different package, it was like, oh, this feels nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just like everything nowadays every movie nowadays feels like it's or is a remake of another movie from before. You know, when you get
Oh
a
yeah,
movie that's something new, it's like, hey, a new story for once. It's not predictable. It's refreshing.
yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, and it's funny because you'd figure that with the ability, with so many media outlets, you'd find like really like nuanced storytelling, and it is happening. Like we're seeing a lot more stuff happening through Hulu and Netflix and all that kind of stuff because there's
Yeah.
so many different submarkets. But for film, that's its own conversation. We read a really interesting article over here at the studio where I forget who wrote it, where they were saying, "Oh, well, it's because movie prices are too damn high." You know, and it's because of the fact that it's going to cost you $70 to go see a movie with two people, it better deliver. So
Yeah.
they have to make a movie that meets your already predetermined expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus being able to just like take a risk for $7 and it's it sucked, who cares?
Yeah.
You know,
No, that makes
no big
sense.
loss.
Yeah.
Here's
Well-
something interesting. Speaking of movies and theaters, so I was watching the preview for The Irishman, the new Netflix or the new Martin Scorsese movie. You know,
Yeah.
and what's interesting is they're releasing it in theaters, you know, on the 1st of October or November or something, and then it gets released on Netflix on the 27th, like
Interesting.
3 or 4 weeks later. I
Yeah.
think that's very interesting.
Yeah,
And I wonder if that's like specifically so that, you know, because they're getting a lot of snub, you know, at, you know, the big, you know, events and stuff like that. And I wonder if they're doing that specifically for
Or
that.
maybe just so you have a chance to see it in theater if you want, but honestly, they're gonna make their money on Netflix, right?
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good move though, especially if they're gonna make something where they're gonna spend the time and they're gonna say, look, you're gonna get something more if you see this thing on a huge screen with, you know, like with just the right sound mix and everything else, and you have that experience. Like that's not surprising to me. And yes, it's certainly motivated by, you know, by people barking at them for like you can't have them run for, you know, in an Oscar
Right.
conversation because they didn't have to release it to a theater. It is a great filter. That, you know, there's a lot of really bad movies that don't get released, and if or at least that don't make it to the theater. So like if they get, you know, if they put their toe in there, I think that's great, you know. But yeah, I definitely do see it as like, yeah, it's gonna keep changing. It's definitely gonna keep changing. I've been really enjoying watching. Do you guys watch Succession?
Oh man, it's so good.
I haven't watched it. No.
So good.
It's pretty good, but like I like there's like one aspect that they're talking about where it's like basically the death of the classic media empire and now technology companies as being like the main players in media. And as we sit here and watch Apple and Amazon and all these people who have media being delivered to you as just part of their ecosystem. It's just an ecosystem play to get you to sign on with their with their this, that, or the other, and it's this like byproduct. I think we're in kind of super fascinating times with it. You know, the next 10 years are going to be interesting because the fundamental structure of what the industry was built on will continue to kind of erode, I think, in that time. And you know, I think we're all going to be going into a little bit of uncharted waters with it.
That's such a great show. Did you know Will Ferrell executive produces that or something?
I know,
Isn't that
right?
Crazy. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah,
I was like, is it the same Will Ferrell? Well, I had to look it up. You know?
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. No, I know. I like each time I see his name on the credits, I get a little wry smile. Because it's so not on brand that I love it.
Which is good. Yeah, that's the only show that I'm like, I religiously Sunday night. It's like, no, this is what I'm doing Sunday night. You know?
Yeah.
So many great characters in that show. It's really good.
It's just been fun to kind of follow along, and everyone on that show is just such a miserable cretin.
I know. I've been telling Matt to watch it. It's really great. It's really great.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I've got a whole list of stuff. I just finished Mindhunter. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah.
Oh well,
I've
we gotta.
Yeah, sorry.
Speaking of which, we gotta get to Mograph recommends. But
Yes.
and I know we're Matt. Do you have to like go? You have a hard out?
20 minutes.
In 20 minutes. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna do, because I want us to be able to concentrate on like the Mograph recommends, the movies and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna blow through these other things like super quick that I have on the list for links and Beeple's people. So okay, I'm gonna go to links real quick, and I'll say, Brandon, if there's all the links that you provided me, I'm gonna put in the show notes. I don't know if there's anything in particular you want to mention, but
so basically, I think is kind of it's piggybacking off of the notion that I was talking about earlier, where it's trying to find people that inspire you that aren't working in the medium you're working in. Finding people that you love what they do, but make sure that they're not working in the same tool sets you're working in. So I found this one guy, Chun Lo, through Twitter, and then through him, it's almost the same way that like when you go like digging for music, where like through this band you see this band, and through this band you find that band. It's this whole kind of like fractal tree. Through him, I found all these incredible artists, and so what I provided with you was a listing of people who I've been really studying their work, over the past year, and trying to find ways to bring that over into the motion world and over into the into the design kind of palettes that I've been kind of playing with, and I just find this stuff inspiring. I think it's beautiful to look at. But this guy's awesome. I mean, not only because his work's like really like well done, but he has all these incredible illustrators that he follows. I think it's a he. But yeah, it's been finding this has made social media for me way more fun again.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I'm a kid again, looking through all this stuff. When I got to a point where like I could not look at one more render to save my life. I was just done. I had stopped posting.
Right.
I had sworn off the industry largely. I was like, I'm just gonna go into hermitude, and and just go off and kind of make my little puddlings in a corner. And then I found all these amazing artists again. I was like, I became completely reinvigorated of just seeing what different people can make. There's a lot out there, I think, still left for us to make, and we haven't yet gotten there.
And so much, I think, that's inspirational ends up coming from other countries, other cultures.
Right.
You get kind of just, I don't know, stagnant sitting in your own culture.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But like the images that you're looking here, it's like, how would you try to make that with a procedural shader?
Right.
Could you?
Yeah, like this one here.
Like, these are challenges that I think when you start dealing with artists who aren't working on a box, and you're like, how can I even try to make that?
Yeah, this site here, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Do you?
The limits of your technical understanding when you have to make it like that.
How do you pronounce the name of this artist here?
Which one?
This is
one?
It's Joaoruas. I don't even know. I'm so bad with the pronunciations anyway.
So yeah, I'm trying to remember that one. I think his last name is Ruiz. So I think that's his first and last name.
Okay. Yeah, look at that.
I know, right? But like, like the lighting, the color palettes, like there's so much to get out of this stuff, and and all I want to do is figure out a way to execute this and bring it back home,
right?
Like, and bring it back to motion, back to, like what happens if you're seeing the stuff breathing, not just in like a, it's waving in the wind, you just hit it with a turbulence displace, but like this thing actually breathing, like feeling the weight of like something like this, and like being in the space with it. Like, I don't know, there's just something really viscerally inspiring about just finding what I feel like is just raw material that you want to bring and give life to, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've been geeking out about. I'll shut up.
Now, some other quick links I have, just real quick. I'll just throw them in there. You can open them, check them out. Check them out. The blend opening titles are out.
Yes.
Chris,
And actually, if you click on the link, on the Vimeo link, and you go down to the description, they show off the animatic, the very first one that they did. And it's so interesting seeing the difference between
where it went,
where they started and what they ended up with.
Yeah.
That's great. I'll also dig into that one.
And then Kaspersky Labs did this enterprise security cyber movie thing that's really cool. I'll put a link to that in there. A couple other ones I saw this week. You've got this Renault Capture Night Shot. It's basically just a new car, but just the way that they put it all together in Octane is really beautiful. I have a link. This is really weird. I guess this has been around for a while, but I guess 3D Coat, they have this whole page about their voice and not using their services for witchcraft, something like that. I don't know what that's about. You can go read that. Let's see. And then that video
that comes up occasionally in the Slack.
Yeah.
The Joseph Gordon-Levitt video, and then lastly, I guess my presentation for SIGGRAPH 2019 is out, so you can check that out. And in VR Corner, I just wanted to mention real quick.
Also, there's the half-res titles as well.
Oh, and the half-res titles. Yeah, I'll put a link to that.
That Box 4 did. So.
And then VR Corner, real quick, I was going to say this is really interesting that they announced that Rift Quest is going to get this thing. I think it's called like the Link or something. There's a port on the Rift Quest, and you're going to be able to just plug it in and plug that into a computer and use the video processing power to play all like the regular titles that the Oculus Rift would play, and then you can unplug it. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have known that, because I would have bought that version of the Rift and not the Rift S, because now it makes it so like the Rift Quest actually can do more than the Rift S can do, because you could use it portable or you could plug it in and get that extra power. So
yeah,
very interesting. I almost want to sell my Rift and go get that one instead. And then I really want to get to Mograph recommends, so I'm going to do the fastest Beeple's people ever. Are you ready for this?
We'll just say that since we had him on, that counts.
Right? No, I if anything, I just want to mention these, or maybe it's like 3 of them, real quick. Okay. September, get out your Beeple viewer of choice to September 22nd, Year of our Lord 2019. It's 2019. And wrong button. This is yeah. What is this called?
Childhood or something like that.
And then he made it into this like animated version called Imaginary Friend on the 24th, which is fun. And but it's interesting because it's mixed with September 23rd's.
Right.
With it's called New Friend. It's
New Friend.
But there's this girl in this field, and she's also the girl that's in the field in the other one, I think. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Or it's similar. Anyway, fastest Beeple's people ever, because we want to do Mograph recommends before Matt has to get out of here.
Oh man, I had to go to the bathroom, but that's all right.
Too
I guess
late.
We'll just wait.
Too late. Because we want to ask you some of your favorites, because we think it's always interesting to see some of our guests' influences, because it is important, as we've talked about like the whole episode today, really. And so we're going to start out with, what is your favorite movie?
Alien.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like different sectors that it goes into. Alien, Irreversible, don't judge me, and then Stalker.
Okay.
And then what about favorite music?
Okay. Currently, Health, Italtech, Sun Glitters is a long-term one, and Rival Consoles. That's enough right now.
I know none of those.
I'm gonna have to look them up. All right, and where am I? Oh, TV show. And some of these can be like your current favorite, not necessarily like your all-time.
Let's do current favorite. Current favorite, I would say, is Succession. There's something really good though that we were seeing that we were bummed out. But yeah, TV's been pretty good right now.
Yeah.
We've been kind of enjoying it. But yeah, Succession is the current binging.
Podcasts? You listen to a lot of podcasts, if any?
Just you guys.
Thanks, bro.
And plug-in.
Plug-in. That's a good one. I used the holy hell out of Retro Dither this week.
Retro Dither.
Retro Dither. Yeah, had a really fun project that I just finished up today with Casey Hupke and Chris Cook over here at the BMO studio, and we were doing some hard data looks for Shoe Company.
Ooh,
I like
pretty.
So we have some cool stuff coming up for that one.
It looks like a 16-bit version of EJ's.
Right, or more like maybe like a 32.
Yeah. It's actually great. You can get some really nice patinas with it. So that was my stoke out this week. Was there anything much for 3D? And then my usual using XP and using Octane and Redshift and all those kind of fun ones. But I think Redshift was the fun one this week, or Retro Dither was the fun one this week.
Oh, I'm definitely bookmarking this one for sure, because I love doing that kind of video game.
Yeah, you can do some really, really cool stuff with it. When you start mixing and matching it with some of the other plugins, you can start getting some really, really nice kind of tinsely sharp looks that are kind of fun.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, you use this and EJ's plugin together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, you can get some. Yeah, mix and match. Yeah. Always mix and match. You never want to be able to tell which plugin you use.
Right. I wish I would have had this when we did the Camp Mograph promos of the video game stuff. Right? Maybe next year. I have more written and planned. I just didn't get to them this year. So
next year.
Yeah.
The best laid plans of mice and men, right?
I want to do a spoof. All your base belong to us. I'll use that. So nice. Next on the list would be headphones. I'm interested in your headphones. They look like NVIDIA fans.
They are the Koss Porta Pros. They are $15 to $20. They have had the same design since the 70s, and they are by far my favorite headphones I've ever owned. Well, I have 3 pairs for each building I go into.
Thanks for supporting my family.
I knew it was either going to be like you weren't sure, you were like on the fence about any of these answers, or you were just going to know exactly.
I spent a long time researching, waffling, changing my mind, and then I move at kind of this glacial pace, and then once I make the decision, that is now the decision.
That's it.
Now it's just, this is the thing I do.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you buying my headphones. It's always someday maybe I'll see the cost residuals. We'll see.
Yeah, right.
Also, okay, so we've changed this a little bit. It used to be like your favorite website or maybe Chrome extension, but we've kind of added in like app. Like, what's your favorite app?
Favorite app? I don't like any of my apps right now. I think most of my apps are pretty homeless. I'm on iOS, and you know what? The Destroy Pixels one is pretty cool, but that's also because I'm a huge fan of the developer. But it's a really cool glitch app. It's by Petter, who used to be the guy who designed Trapcode.
Okay.
So he's someone who you should be following anyways, because he's just brilliant.
Story Pixels?
No, Destroy Pixels.
Destroy Pixels.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say one of my new favorite features of iOS 13 is silencing all unknown phone calls.
Yes, that's a winner.
And what's great about it is you're like, oh, I might miss something from a client. It's like, even if their number is somewhere in your email on your phone, it'll still ring.
Right.
Because of Siri suggestions, and like the robocallers are gone. And even if it's somebody you just called earlier that day, it'll still come through. So it's
right.
And if it doesn't come through, they can leave a message. So you know what? I'll take the chance that somebody's going to leave me a voicemail over getting 5,000 robocalls a day.
Oh wait, so they will actually go to voicemail?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I
you
need to
you
turn that
basically
on.
screening calls, but there's no notification, there's no vibration, any of that stuff. And I'm telling you, I
Mhm.
turned it on yesterday, and life has been so much more peaceful when I'm working. Anyway.
I a couple years ago I made the decision of never answering phone calls
Mhm.
anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and my life got so much better. I'll respond to a text,
Mm-hmm.
but
Uh-huh.
I will not pick up the phone ever. Like unless it's of course my wife,
Right.
because you of course will pick up that call. But really beyond that, you just don't pick up the call and just call them back. Get yourself to a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And where you can clear your mind and actually have a conversation, great, call them back. But
Yeah.
I was getting so much anxiety from having to pick up the phone call and feeling like I'm in the middle of doing something and now I'm talking to you and I don't want to sound like a total buffoon and
Mhm.
like just not picking up anymore and being like, okay, cool, I can go step out and take the call. Everything is like so much better in my life now.
Well, the next question on the list is your favorite life hack, but I feel like that's probably one of them.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like because I can't stand being on the phone in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
in like middle school, I developed a stutter, and it was I think it was just because my family all like to talk at once, and so if I can't hear myself think, or if I feel like I
Gotcha.
have someone listening to what I'm saying to someone on a phone, I become immediately aware of like my body posturing and what I'm saying to someone in
Mm-hmm.
how it sounds and not even what I'm saying.
Right.
So I have to like go run to like run outside and like go like wander around the back of a block to be able to like have a phone call and actually like be there and be present on the phone call. So that's also a big chunk of why I just stopped picking up the phone when you call, and I'll just know that I'll call you back the second I can drop what's currently in my hand.
Mhm.
Cool. Any other life
So
hacks you can think of offhand, or is that probably?
Uh, that, and I'm going to be kind of in the Casey Hupke camp of figure out something to do in the morning hour to kind of reset your brain
Mm-hmm.
every day, and it'll help a lot. I had some about midway through running GT, I was just a frustrated ball of just angry, and after losing my temper a couple times in the studio because of just whatever, right? None of this stuff matters, and I'm losing my temper. I started doing a workout every morning where I have hour to hour and a half before I leave for the office. I just do it at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I know every day how I'm feeling. I know every day halfway through the workout, okay, I can't keep the numbers straight in my head. This is harder than it usually is, or oh, this is running pretty clean. I feel pretty good today, and you already know kind of a calibration of how you're going to perform at some level when you have a thing that you do every day to balance yourself up against.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be a workout, but just some kind of a process that you can go through in the morning hour for me has been a huge thing because every day you're a little different. But if the process is the same every day for this like one little window, you can always gauge how you are different today brushing up against it,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and it'll actually change how I actually approach the day. I'm like, oh, okay, I can't remember anything, so I'm gonna maybe try to tackle these kinds of tasks today,
Uh-huh.
because I know that I'm gonna just muck these other ones up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but that's just me. It's my little recipes for keeping myself sane.
Cool.
Cool. Well, you know what? I'm sad that we only had 2.5 hours to talk.
Yeah, right?
Because there are so many more topics that we could just go off on right
Mhm.
now. And so we're gonna have to do this again at some point and continue
Please.
with more. We really appreciate you being on, taking the time today, and
Yeah,
all
man.
of that. If people want to find you, like on the interwebs and stuff, where can they find you?
Yeah, so obviously you can go to my personal website, alchem.tv. I'm on Twitter at bparvini. Instagram is b_Parvini. And if I'm not answering you fast enough, you can always go check out some of my favorite people over at bmo.tv.
Mm-hmm.
That's Brandon Herzl, and that's actually where we're hanging out today.
Cool.
So I so yeah, you can find me through any of those routes. And yeah, if you want to email me or whatever, get me to the site. I'm always happy to meet new people. I'm a huge fan of how genuinely supportive and loving this community is.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right.
Cool, man.
Well, we're gonna get out of here.
Cool.
You can rate us on iTunes, leave a review, or subscribe in your podcatcher of choice. It helps get our ratings up a little bit. You can subscribe to our newsletter, which just went out the other day, I believe, yesterday. And we're putting all sorts of info about meetups and live streams and all that fun stuff in there. You can say you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt with the Mograph logo tee, the Paul Babb Feel the Babb 2020 shirt. All the profits from that go to Doctors Without Borders. The Render Things hoodie tee and long sleeve shirt, and of course the That Render is Fire T-shirt. You know, if you want to make sure you wear it ironically, though.
Sure.
That's very important. And of course, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, YouTube, Mograph.com. And that about wraps it up.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. We're going to get out of here. Till next week, I'm Dave.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Brandon.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
Later, yo.
All right. Let's.
Now here comes the true test, whether my thing actually
know.
recorded.
Yeah. Just give it some time, Matt. Give it some time. I'm going to go to standby screen. Standby. We're still live. Just give me a second to turn off the things here.